All right.
And then we'll go from there. And it says we're live.
All right. Very good.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Collins. I have the privilege of being president of Ray and Associates, and you are about to meet one of the three finalists to be your next superintendent. We, Dr. Gonzalez is having the opportunity to talk to your administrators, to talk to your teachers, to talk to your secretaries, custodians, and bus drivers, to your parents, to members of the community, and most importantly, to you, the student. So, and she's going to interview with the board. So, Dr. Gonzalez, by nightfall, will be pretty tired. But you all have been fabulous in your questions. So let me kind of, before we lay out what we're going to do in the next half hour, and so therefore we're going to need to be quick. So we may just kind of move along because we only have a half hour with you. But is that I took your questions and I tried to capture your thoughts by somebody's questions. So yours may not be directly asked, but it'll be included as a subject. And what I found from your questions was that you gave us 6 subjects. One was around equity and inclusion, and I found 2 questions. Another one was around the pandemic as it has been and somewhat currently. There are 4 around what I would call post-COVID, or what are we going to do from here going forward? There are 3 around mental health. There's 1 question around safety, and there's 1 question about the superintendent and the Board of Education. And then I found 4 that seem to stand tall on their own in different subjects, and we call those extras. So before Dr. Gonzalez, who will introduce herself, tell you a little bit about who she is, why she's here, what her thoughts are about your school district and how she would like to lead it. And she'll do that in a shortened version because we only have a half hour. And then I will ask her your questions and she will respond. If we get time, we'll get to the extras. I have 148 at the moment. So for those of you that are watching it later, that's when we recorded it live. And we're supposed to be done around 2:15. If we drip a minute or 2, we won't tell anybody. So without further ado, it is a real pleasure. I have got to know a little bit about Dr. Gonzalez, and I've had a few opportunities to converse with her on the phone. It is actually the first time we've looked at each other face to face, even though we're not face to face for real. It's close.
Right.
And I just want to tell all of you that she sits here as one of your 3 finalists because she really has those kinds of experiences to lead your district, because she really has been that successful in her career. And she has been chosen by your Board of Education through other selection processes, the shrinking of the number of candidates to bring forward who was the board going to interview. She's been interviewed by the board already once. So she's been on about a 5-step process just to get here. So once you're done, you'll have a chance to go onto the school district website and fill out. It's a SurveyMonkey framework, and it's called an impression sheet. And we're going to ask for your comments today on Dr. Gonzalez, tomorrow on another candidate, and Thursday on the 3rd candidate. So please don't be shy and don't forget. Okay, without further ado, Dr. Gonzalez, we can't wait to talk to you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And to all the students of Salt Lake City School District, thank you for this opportunity to meet with you, even though I can't see you. It's still a pleasure. I was complimenting the Mike's company here that it's great that they include the student's voice, because that's what it's about, is empowering our future leaders of tomorrow with the voice of today. So thank you for that. I'm interested in Salt Lake City for a couple of reasons. One, well, I have a couple of little reasons. I have a couple of children who live in the Salt Lake Valley, and I have a couple of grandchildren. So yesterday when I flew in, I had the opportunity to go hug and snuggle on them for a little while. So I definitely have a personal vested interest in this area. But with the school district, particularly when I investigated what all you have to offer and the diversity, my family's diverse, and I have worked in prior divisions where there's a lot of diversity. And to me, diversity is not about our differences, it's about celebrating our uniqueness and celebrating that. So this morning I had the opportunity to go visit Highland High School so far, and I've also been at Meadowlark Elementary. And my heart was just pounding with excitement to see the diversity and to be in such a diverse and inclusive community. So my love for diversity and being a champion of equity and accountability and in closing achievement gaps, I just knew that Salt Lake City had the potential to be another home for me and a place to serve. I do look at being a superintendent as one of service. I began my career in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, in the mountains, which you guys would probably think are hills because it's nothing like the Rocky Mountains. Nonetheless, they're mountains to us. And so I started my career there, and I was able to start the AP program as a Spanish teacher. And then I went down to the Richmond area, right outside the Richmond area, which I worked in Chesterfield County. And I actually went back to my alma mater. So nothing like working with your teachers who were your teachers and now they're your colleagues. But I spent another 9 years teaching there. So I had 14 years in the classroom. And then I have 14 years in leadership responsibilities. And at Meadowbrook High School, my alma mater, it's a very diverse school division. And we just celebrated that diversity with different programs and celebration and flags all through the building representing people's diverse backgrounds. But it also became an English language learner school. And so we worked hard to make sure that our children were not marginalized there and fought to give them a voice. We also started the IB program when I was there. So I also have taught IB and AP students, but worked hard with the English language learners. We devised a native speaker Spanish class so that they could be literate in their own language while they were mastering the English language, but also to open the door of opportunity so that they could segue into AP literature classes and IB classes. We always afforded our students the opportunity to sit in those classes, take a swing at bat, as we called it, that nobody should be denied those opportunities for more rigorous content and exposure. From there, we also, while we were there, worked on building in intervention times throughout the day. So because a lot of our students had commitments, they were working, they were taking care of younger siblings. So we built in remediation time during the day. We relooked at our grading practices and also developed professional learning communities for our instructors, for our teachers, so that we could all be aligned to give the best that we could to our students. From there, I had the opportunity to go be an administrator at a technical center. And so I have a great love of career and technical education and what it can do for our students. I feel like we have a responsibility to prepare our students for both college and career and military, and to empower our students to have those choices and to at least be prepared enough so that they can choose either path that they so desire. From there, I went on to work at an alternative school for students who were really struggling. They had a hard time focusing or being successful in their home schools. So we worked with them there and we devised experiences that they had. And so we worked hard on that and to really focus on how we approach discipline so that we were being equitable to all students in that area. From there, I went on to work at Williamsburg. I went on to central office in Williamsburg, working with accountability and assessments. And I had done some school improvement coaching down at Meadowbrook. And so now I did it at a division level, really working to make sure we peel back the layers so that we really make sure that all our students are achieving, not just some of them, and definitely not looking at the data in the aggregate so that it masked the areas that we need to improve on. And then I went to Charles City. It's a much smaller school division, but guess what, guys? I got to wear many hats. So I feel like that I've experienced a lot of the roles that a lot of the staff that I'll be asked to lead. I've done the job. I've actually been in the trenches. My philosophy as a leader is servant leadership. What can I do to empower our teachers and strengthen them? What can we do to empower our students? And then I went on to be a superintendent in a larger rural division. Didn't have quite as much diversity as I'm used to in all my other areas. Even Charles City, as small as it was very majority minority school division, as were the other schools I worked at. So again, in coming to Salt Lake, I'm really excited to be back around diversity with a lot of expression and a lot of resources to work with students to help them all be successful. So now I'll turn the time back over to you, Mike, and perhaps we can start on those questions that the kids have.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your background and giving everybody an idea of who you are and how you got here. So we're gonna go through and we're gonna do the equity and inclusion. There's 2 questions here. We have about 20 minutes, 22 at most, and we have about 12 questions. So just to kind of give you a little bit of math.
Okay.
All right. How do you plan to help students and their families understand and solve current issues like racism, abuse, hunger, homelessness, bullying, and more in the Salt Lake City School District?
Well, it comes about one, having grace and patience and tolerance and love for one another. Then it comes in growing the knowledge and content area of each other. And it's like Michelle Obama said one time, it's about having a voice and growing your voice, but it's also appropriate to step back and to learn and to know of others. So we need to be intentional in what we're going to do to work in our communities, to understand each other with our cultural proficiencies and be respecters of it, and also be respecters of those who have voice and to empower our families to have the voice. Part of that comes from understanding how they best express themselves and to make sure that they have the platforms to do so. And then you have to have processes and structures in place. You have to have, I know in Page County, we used an app, a Stop It app. So if there was bullying, the children could anonymously send it in so we could address it and take care of the situations. And then there's ways that families can reach out to us. You have to make it safe for people to be able to express themselves and ask for help and to empower them to have the will to ask. Sometimes it's hard to ask for service, but we are the servant leaders. We have to help with our clientele and give them the supports that they need.
Thank you. Your next question under E&I, Salt Lake City schools have a very diverse population. How do you think your background will help you create solutions that will best address everyone? Do you have any plans you would like to implement immediately?
Well, I don't want to implement any plans immediately because the first thing you want to do as a leader is you want to listen and you want to look and you want to hear from the people. You want to hear what their concerns are. The last thing you need is an outsider to come in and just come in and change everything right away. So I want to have those conversations. I'm used to having a student advisory committee who I'm able to have bold and courageous conversations with. And so I look forward to doing that as well. But as far as my skill set, I feel like in all my other experiences, and I've even worked with students from multicultural diversity, but also socioeconomic diversity. And so again, I've had those experiences where I've really had to put the rubber to the road and put programs in place like the native Spanish speaker classes, like the student assistant teams, like the Handle with Care and the mental health, youth and mental health groups we have. You have to put these things in place. But before I could do any of that, I had to listen and I had to assess to see what the greatest needs were so we can get the biggest bang for our buck. So are there things we need to put in place? Perhaps. But I'm going to need your voice, your guidance, and those of the community to help guide and direct those conversations. It's not about Dr. G coming in and just, mandating the way it is. It's about Dr. G walking alongside of people and serving as a leader to help us get us to where we all want to be together.
Thank you. All right, we're going to change topics. We
Okay.
just have one question in this group, and it's kind of more about the current situation around the pandemic. How do you plan on keeping students safe during the ongoing pandemic? And what will the rules be regarding masks, social distancing, and hybrid scheduling?
Okay. Well, let's look at that. First of all, to keep students safe, you have to keep your health mitigation strategies, and you have to do it with fidelity. And coupled with that will be what are the recommendations or the mandates from the state. Every state is different. So Utah's laws might be a little different requirements from what Virginia laws are. But one thing I'm a rule follower. So whatever the mandates are from the governor here and the state legislator, we will have to abide by. When they become recommendations, you're usually safer by following the recommendations because you want to follow the science. You want to follow what the science is telling us. The last thing we want to do is make it about our personal opinions and our political beliefs. We have to do what are the mitigation strategies and the practices that the science is telling us to do that'll keep our students safe. As we move forward out of this pandemic and we navigate the rest of this year into the following year, it's really about what are the recommendations being given to us and we implement them to help our families feel safe, but also taking into account how do we keep our teachers safe who have to also come in the classroom and teach. And then as we move forward, we need to step back and go, hey, what worked out of all of that? What do we want to keep? What do we want to still do next year? And what do we definitely want to abandon? As we get more, we're able to do more and more face-to-face. As far as the hybrid model, I know you all just jumped back on February 8th, the secondary students, and it's about finding what fits for our kids. At least you have the opportunity to come back. We also are doing the hybrid model. And it's about empowering our students to, be able to take the responsibility. It's harder, isn't it? Working at home and doing it on your own. For some kids, it's working really well. And for other kids, it's not. So there's no shame in that game to admit what works and what doesn't. and allowing us to offer the different modalities that you need to be successful, and we work together to find that success.
Thank you. All right, we turn to a question about safety.
Okay.
How will you work to create safe and welcoming learning environments that take into consideration all students in the district? We are such a diverse district, and knowing that all students will be supported and validated in whoever they are is very important. So we actually have a question, and then we have kind of an explanation or why the question. So the real question is, how will you work to create a safe and welcoming learning environments that take into consideration all students in the district?
Okay, I think that comes back to what I said earlier about diversity. Diversity is about celebrating and embracing our uniqueness, and we need to recognize that in each other. And for some students, that's hard. Sometimes students have a tendency to just kind of look at their own world. So we as educators have the responsibility to help expand that lens so that they can appreciate and celebrate other cultures. Remember, in part of finding your voice as a student is listening to the voices of your classmates and looking at it through their perspective and having empathy for what they're going through. So we have to be intentional about that. We can't just let it just happen, even though it is organic in so many ways, but we have to find ways to serve one another, to meet the needs of one another, to be empathetic for one another, and to treat each other with kindness, but also have structures and processes in place for when it doesn't work, and to have those courageous conversations and not be a you're at fault, but be brave enough to peel the layers back and go, you know what, that didn't work, or that just works for me and my friends, but that's not working for the other kids. So when we make changes as administrators, and we have to do some different things in schools, let's all communicate and work together to say, hey, yeah, who is it impacting the most? And who is it impacting the most that doesn't have a voice at the table? And then let's all work together to make sure that that happens.
Okay, we have another category with one question, and this is in regards to the board superintendent relationship. And that question is, what skills do you have that will unite the board members into a more functional team?
Okay. Well, team building is one of the biggest responsibilities of your superintendent and their relationship with the school board. So one of the first things that you want to do is you want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of each other's roles. And that comes in with having like a retreat or a meeting where we've set the norms and the protocols. How are we going to communicate? What's our communication plan? What does that look like? What are our goals? What are we all doing together? What are our roles? So think of it like a ship. Okay. On the ship, you have the central office staff, you have the schools, you have the teachers, and we're all the rowers on the boat. And then you have the school board who's at the helm, and they're giving us direction through determining what kind of monies we're going to have to finance our projects, but also in developing policy and in governing us and kind of laying out kind of like the guardrails, the bumper rails, the parameters in which we're going to work. So with the superintendent, they are your boss as a superintendent. They're your boss. That's how you answer to. But then the superintendent is kind of like the boss lady of all the other employees. So you have to balance the needs of all the other employees, do the day-to-day work, the trench work, the grunt work, get it all done. We're the how. We're how it gets done, but the school board determines the what. So sometimes those lines get blurred, and that's reality, guys. That happens in any organization. It's not unique just to schools. It happens in any organization. So sometimes you have to be strong enough as a superintendent to step back and go, we need to have a breather because we're blurring the lines. And that's my role. This is what my team and I need to do, and this is what we need from you. And part of it might entail that we need to do a book study on how to be a high impact school board, because a lot can be done when we're all in sync. This is the thing that I told the board when I was being interviewed. I celebrate diversity and discussion. Let's all put it on the table. Let's hear everybody's side, everybody's point of view. But when we walk out of that room, there has to be unity and command, which means unity in the decision-making, no throwing each other on the bus. We're all supportive until we come back and meet again and be brave enough to look at what's working and what's not looking, but to understand our roles, working as a team. We don't need toxicity. We all need to work together. We can be tactful and truthful at the same time to move the work ahead.
Thank you. All right, next category has 3 questions.
Okay.
And it's 2:05, so we got at least 10 minutes. So we're in good shape.
Good job.
Good job on your part.
Oh, thank you.
So this is the category of what I would call mental health.
Okay.
And I believe to all of you that submitted questions, because there were more, that these seem to be the larger questions, so hopefully they captured a couple of the others that may not have been asked directly. So let's start with the first one. What will you do to improve increasing mental health problems of students and teachers?
Okay. Well, one thing that I think we need to do is you have to be intentional about self-care. You have to, for this teaching staff, they have to have time to take care of themselves, that it's okay to disconnect from the school building. So I'm going to encourage your teachers to do that, that as much as they love their students and want to take care of them, they also have to take care of themselves. They need to have time to laugh, to enjoy each other's company, and to celebrate and have team building experiences, but also time to breathe away from all this enormous work we have before us. For students, we need to connect with our students. So being intentional in the activities and the learning experiences we have, and having just frank conversations. And we have dedicated times now where we talk about social emotional issues, where we talk about how kids are feeling. And the only way that that's going to happen is if you intentionally carve out time out of the day, as important as academics are. You need that time to delve into those conversations that students need to have with each other, to understand each other, but also with a mentor, with a teacher, someone that they look up to and respect, because maybe they can't have all those conversations at home, and maybe they can, or maybe they need someone else to understand it. So you got to be intentional in your practice. You just can't be talking about it. You have to provide avenues for them. We incorporated a program where some of our staff got specifically trained in mental health, kind of like first aid, like how to help a child who's in crisis. And we had purple lanyards that they would wear. So a student knew just visually which teacher they could go to that would have the skill set to get them the resources they needed to help them. To have things like that in place, and to have hotlines. We also have hotlines, but to have their intentional moments during the day as well.
This one's sort of similar, but give you an opportunity to kind of maybe take a different tack. What are you going to do to protect the mental health of the Salt Lake City students?
To protect the mental health. And I think that's where you have to listen. That's where you have to understand what are the pressures. We can't assume just by looking at a child, oh, they must be okay. Because even the child who looks okay has things going on. I think one of the things that it comes down to is having those relationships with students will open up to you, but also being aware of every child. Every adult in that building should know their children, and every child needs to have a concerned adult who's looking out for them, who cares about them. And so again, that comes back to that intentionality, having those social emotional lessons and activities. We start in preschool. You start in preschool, you have it. So children learn how to have that voice so that they can speak and they can interact with other people. And for some children, that's hard. It's hard to speak up. I'm not going to share out. I'm not going to say what's going on in my life. So you have to have that psychological safety net where you have a safe environment. So that's where you have to build that climate and culture where children feel safe, connected with the right adults in the right environment. So you start peeling back the layers so that they know that we care about them, that we care about each and every one of you kids, because you guys have been through something phenomenal. The seniors last year didn't get to finish their senior year. Schools were stopped. And now we have seniors this year who are just stepping foot in the school building. What a challenge you all have, but what an opportunity to build that flexibility, that resiliency. And we're there along that journey, every step of the way with you to help you get through that. So again, intentionality to help you navigate the mental health challenges you're facing now.
Thank you. What do you think about offering students mental health days with excused absences? We got right down to it. Okay.
I know. Well, that's a decision we'd have to take to the school board. But I am an outside of the box thinker. I think there's value in that. We as adults have those days. They're called sick days. And some days it's a mental health day. And any educator who tells you otherwise, that is not true. We all have them. So why not incorporate something for that? I actually like that idea. That's really outside of the box thinking. So that's something that I would definitely be interested in exploring as we train you up to get your voices and to become and step foot into the adulthood. Why not incorporate some of those experiences as well? As long as we're keeping our eye on the prize, which is about the instructional core, but complemented with that is the mental health. So how do we merge those two together? But I love that outside of the box thinking. So thank you for that one.
Thanks, Dr. Gonzalez. Last category. Well, we got 4 questions in it. We got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
6 or 7. And I want to give you a minute at least to close, which we'll do outside of that. So
okay.
We'll move along. So this is on post-COVID, or kind of where from here.
Okay.
So as we look at that, the first one I have is Are you for or against going back to school in person full time?
I'm for it. But when I say that, let me tell you this. I don't know that that works for everybody. There have been some students who have flourished in a virtual situation. So I don't think you throw the water out with the baby, as they say. It's like, why don't we look and see what worked? Why can't we have a virtual academy throughout the whole district where for whom this was a good model learning virtually, why can't they still do it? And why can't it be for those who want to hold down a job, who have to help with their families? Why can't they do that? And then they learn at night asynchronously. There is value, though, to meet in person with a teacher. It is a lot harder. You can still build relationships and be that mentor and help take care of the mental health of your students. It's just a different format and a little bit more challenging for people to do it virtually, as we're doing now. But there's value into allowing there to be options of learning, different modalities. But I would also caveat that in, if you're not being successful remotely, you might not get the option to learn virtually. So it's also about what works for you and what fits. But definitely as we move forward, sure, do we want it to go back to what we consider to be normal? But remember, normal for whom? Remember, old model might have worked well for some kids and still not worked well for others. Maybe this model is really working for others. So again, redefining what normal looks like, bringing kids back, but also affording the opportunities where it did work to continue for those for whom it did serve.
Thank you. This is a good one. What resources is the district willing to provide for kids who have fallen back significantly because of the pandemic?
Well, to be very truthful, I don't know everything that Salt Lake is doing. I did have a conversation this morning, though, about some credit recovery and some intervention practices that are going into play. So I would say from outside looking in, if I was here and had to help figure learning loss, and that's what it's about. How do we address the learning loss of our students? That's where having the kids back in person. And again, like I said, maybe taking away the option to stay home, still bringing you in a safe setting for the concerns that your families has and what's going on in your home life, but to provide you that extra support that you're going to need, because just passing you does you a disservice. And that's not fair of us to pass you if you haven't learned the material that you need to learn. But perhaps focusing more, do you really need to memorize and learn everything that you can Google? Isn't that the truth? You kids know how to look things up. So why don't we get down to how you can apply the knowledge and really focus on the power standards and learn and apply those things. So the interventions would be what kind of remediation, what kind of support services. And to be truthful, I don't know what all that Mr. Madden has in place here. You're interim superintendent now. I just know as a superintendent, what I'm doing for my kiddos now is that's what we're looking at. What supports are needed? How many are failing? Where are they failing at? What grade levels? What classes, what topics, and then we're filling in the holes there. And we're looking at either extended year, we're looking at summer boot camps, jump academies, bringing them back. Somehow it's like leave no child behind. We're in this together, kids. We all have to find a way to make it work and help you be successful.
Last one on post-COVID. What are your plans for the future of the district, especially with COVID-19 still around or leaving?
Yeah. So, guys, that's really where it comes down to. We have to look at the science, and not everyone's going to have vaccinations. We can't force teachers to have vaccinations. And so it's a matter of you still have to allow people their freedoms that they're entitled to. And so it's about designing a model that works for all those parameters and being able to provide those services. So it really comes down to resurveying the staff, looking at the metrics, looking at where we're at with this pandemic, because if it's not that, it might be something down the road. So staying flexible and open enough to decide what's the best fit. So that's going to take a lot of summertime conversation. If I'm selected to be the superintendent, that conversation is going to start right after I get hired or it's decided, because I need to have those conversations now with your leadership team so we can start planning. You can't do that at the last minute, guys. So we're going to need ideas from everybody on how we move ahead and what do schools look like next year, and providing the biggest bang for our buck and still not marginalizing any of our students. So I'm going to need your input. It's going to take a lot of work to bring all that back around.
Thank you so much. I got time for one extra.
Okay.
And this one makes me smile because it's kind of the vernacular of the different views of school lunch, just to give you a hint. So do you plan on having George Bush lunch or Michelle Obama lunch?
That's too funny.
Good lunch
So
or bad lunch.
personally, I know that's so funny.
I
All
couldn't
right.
resist not asking that. I just have to tell
That's a great question because when I went to school, I actually loved our lunches. Oh my gosh, they were so good. And okay, it's been a few years, all right. So it was even George Bush, all right, guys. But nonetheless, so what we have to look at first and foremost, guys, as a superintendent, my responsibility is to follow the laws. And when Michelle Obama was our first lady, that was one of her initiatives to put into place some healthy kind of restrictions or parameters for us, however you want to look at it. Kind of depends what lifestyle you live as far as what diet you eat. Some of you might prefer the George Bush version where there's a little bit more latitude and you could have more selections on the plate. Now, not so much because they are worried about our health. So at the end of the day, that the answer would be I follow the law and the USDA guidelines, which are pretty much the Michelle Obama menu right now. And I know what that means because our kids back in my division now are having the same issues that you're having. So one thing we did do that I will say will be fun is we tried new recipes. I mean, we had to follow the guidelines, but we taste tested with my advisory committee. We taste tested and we got your input on what you like and everything. So we can do that. Even though we have to follow the guidelines, that might not be quite as tasty as what we're used to, but we can certainly be a little bit more creative within the guidelines that we have.
Thank you, Doc. I couldn't resist.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is. So we've come to the end of our time, but we'd like to give you a minute to kind of share, now that you've heard these kinds of questions, is there any closing thoughts you would like to share with students in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, I'm just so excited if I get the opportunity to work with you and really to serve. I look at running a school division as running a business, and our clients are our students first and foremost. And I look forward to shadowing with you guys. I want to walk in your shoes and see what a day looks like. I've done that in the past, and it's a matter of seeing what does your day actually look like with your interactions with your classmates, with your teachers, with your coursework. I love having an advisory committee where I get to hear straight from students to hear what's working and what's not. What about the grading practice? What about the calendar changes? What about this, that, and the other? It's so refreshing to get it from a student's perspective. And then what I found that students like is they like knowing why. There's a big rumor out there, like if you change the dress code, why you change the dress code? And I go, what do you mean that we're changing the dress code? So it was good to hear what's on the rumor mill from the students' perspective, and then to be able to tell them, guys, we're not even thinking about that. Are you kidding me? And so they were like so relieved. Oh, good to know. But I empowered my students on the advisory committee to go back out and tell their students. So I look forward to working with the students here. I look forward to the diversity and looking through things through a different lens, and are really going back to it because that's what I'm really from, is a lot of diversity. But to also just hear your experiences here in the Salt Lake Valley. What are your challenges? Because you guys are growing up in a lot tougher times. It's not the same old with the pandemic and the remote learning and the way that you've all had to navigate this. You all are champions. And so what can we do to empower you to take on the world next? Because you've taken on this pandemic head on. You've proven you can weather the storm. Now, how do we help you get to where you need to be? And that requires input from you. And I look forward to working with you closely. And I love having fun. I'm a big cheerleader at games. I love to bounce around and get the crowd going and attending your activities and seeing you all flourish. So I look forward to that opportunity. And thank you so much for your questions. Very thoughtful, very deep and reflective. And I look forward to further discussions if I'm selected as your superintendent.
Dr. Gonzalez, thank you so very much for sharing your time and your insights. Students, fabulous questions. If we didn't quite get to one of yours, hopefully we covered topics that you cared about. There is a question on the Q&A, and I mentioned in the very beginning, and I'm going to say it again. There's an opportunity for you to share your comments, to share your impressions, first of Dr. Gonzalez today, another candidate tomorrow, and another candidate on Thursday. On your school district website, under the search tab, it's called an impression form. Please go on it. It's basically a Survey Monkey, and you have comment sections, 2 questions. Please go fill it out. If you weren't with us at exactly this moment and are watching it this evening, go fill it out. We want your feedback. Your school board wants your feedback. And I'm sure Dr. Gonzalez would be interested, just because we all want to learn from you all the time. So thanks so very much again, Dr. Gonzalez. I know people in Salt Lake City are just delighted to have you with them.
Well, thank you.
Thank you to all the students, and thank you to the school board. And, you know, a tip of the hat to a very good district in Salt Lake City. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.